the co-main big fight for the Dagestanis. The Nurmagomedovs are cleaning house. And I would like to, I wish I could find the tweet or whatever I did. It was maybe 12 years ago, probably around 12 years ago, 11 years ago. If anybody can find it and bring it up, I'll buy you a whiskey. But I said, mark my words, the Russians, the Dagestanis, are going to take over. They're going to take over. They're going to take over the sport. They're going to take over because the way they train, the championship environment and culture that they're in all the time, everybody's doing the same thing. The cool thing to do is to train like those guys train. If you want to be a cool guy, you do what those guys are doing. But not only is it that they have a culture, a championship culture where they're all training their ass off and working hard, but they have combat sambo. Combat sambo is a superior amateur feeding system into MMA by leaps and bounds. They're already doing MMA with small gloves. They wear headgear. They have a gi top, shorts, and shin pads. They're on an open mat, so they don't get to rely on just cage work. They have a lot of open mat work, cutting guys off, staying on the mat type things. I even think they all headbutts. I think I've seen guys headbutt each other on that thing. It's superior. We have guys who are doing one discipline and then get to a certain point where they can't do that amateur discipline anymore. And then they jump ship and go into MMA. And then they have to learn a bunch of other disciplines. That's not what these Dagestanis are doing. That's not what they're doing. They're starting off fighting MMA from a very young age. The rules are slightly different because it's amateur based, but like it's superior, far superior to any amateur system we have in the States. We do have some pancreation. Some people have been pushing the pancreation and stuff. I don't know how that's running. I haven't really seen it. I do know it exists, but I don't think it's on the level of combat sambo. I think we need to bring combat sambo to America. I think we need to bring it here, guys. We're not going to have any more champs. We're not going to have any more champs if we don't bring that method, we don't bring that amateur system into the U.S. You know, I'm perfectly comfortable with getting rid of all amateur MMA promotions because they're kind of trash anyways. You know, they're different from every state's a little bit different. They're usually not wearing headgear. It's mostly a pro fight, but they're just not getting paid a lot of times. I don't see it as beneficial. You know, I wouldn't have guys who I would push into amateur fights, you know, unless you had no real amateur experience in competition. If you haven't done jiu-jitsu or wrestling tournaments a lot, you know, I would maybe force you into that just to get some experience. That's kind of dumb. You know, people are still getting knocked out. People are still getting slammed. People are still getting big injuries in the amateur ranks. And, you know, you have guys putting 16 fights in the amateurs. It's kind of silly. It's silly. You shouldn't be doing that. Roxy Depew, will Usman 16-0 end up in the UFC or stay at Bellator for the time being, since several of his teammates are already in the UFC of the same weight class? That's the thing, man. We don't have promotional champs, right? We don't have world champs because guys with different promoters don't get to fight each other. We don't have an independent title. We don't have a way of knowing who the best is in the world. We don't. Everybody assumes that if you're in UFC, you're the best, but we don't know how UFC plays games with who they want fighting for the big fights. They care more about excitement than they care about how good you are, how much you're going to be able to win. If you don't sell tickets, that's all they care about, is selling tickets. If you don't get eyeballs going, if you don't have the social media clout, that's what they care more about than how good you are. So they may keep you out of the UFC altogether. You may never get a chance. You may never get a chance to fight on one of their feeder companies like LFA or Combates or Cage Warriors. Usman Nurmagomedov wins, and he made it look kind of easy. And this is another thing I love about the Dagestanis and these guys, right? Khabib, Usman, Islam, right? 3 studs from the same place, from the same training, completely different fighting styles. Completely different fighting styles. You watch Usman fight, he kind of looks like a Taekwondo fighter. He uses a lot of straight kicks from range. And that was a major problem for Patricky. Major problem, because he's got dynamite hands. He's gonna hook you and put you to sleep. But he couldn't get in the range. he couldn't get into range the whole time because every time he'd step close, Usman fired one of those straight kicks out. He was like a head taller than him. He had some reach, and he made sure to keep Patricky out of range, keep him out of punching range. He was, you know, I don't like the way he does this. He leans his head back when he slips sometimes. I don't like that, but it's kind of because he's so tall and he's so out of range for a lot of guys. It's like he leans back and they can't reach you. They can't get to his head. It's like a little guy punching up. But yeah, he slips, was moving away. He has good footwork. He's using kind of more of a Taekwondo stance. Used a lot of straight kicks, and you know he looked great. He looked really good, and he knows how to wrestle because all the Dagestanis know how to wrestle. Because part of combat sambo is wrestling. They do a lot of wrestling with combat sambo. There's a lot of judo. You know, Islam is great with foot sweeps, and he has a lot of judo throws from clinch. Khabib is more make you miss, hit you, get inside, put you in the fence, grab a leg, put you on the ground. He's a bear. I know he's the eagle, but he is a bear when it comes to his fighting style. He'll get inside, put you on your back, and then beat the crap out of you. So 3 amazing fighters with 3 different styles, but they're all from the same camp. They all train together. They all learn from the same guy. You know, I think that's really interesting. But I think that also comes from the combat sambo background. There's a lot of different ways to crack a nut, right? There's a lot of different ways to skin a cat. There's a lot of different ways to win a combat sambo fight. And I think they all use different strategies and different skills that they had to do that. But they're still doing that from a young age. Fighting, wrestling, doing submissions, doing the judo, all at once. They don't have to compartmentalize it. Too big a word for me. Oh, I got to go to judo practice. Now I got to go to wrestling practice. Now I got to go to whatever practice, which most of us do. You know, I came from wrestling. I had to learn all the stand-up. I had to learn the jiu-jitsu after the fact. I'm in my 20s. I was in my 20s, and I'm like trying to learn how to do boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai, and jiu-jitsu. It's a lot to learn in a quick period of time, you know. I did it, but most people are not. They're not going to do that. They're not on my level. They don't have that Fitch blood.